morning, everyone. Is this mic also on? Okay. It's a pleasure to join all of you for this session today. I hope you all are learning a lot, as we all are, throughout these sessions and especially the one-on-one conversations. Firstly, thank you all for joining us this early in the morning. I know this is fairly early. Some of you had a fantastic evening last night. We'll do two things: try to keep it as useful as possible. Two, try to make sure that we are not your reason for a second coffee within the next 30 minutes. Sounds good? All right. Before we move on, I want cover a little bit of introduction about who we are as Nagarro. We are a digital engineering company focusing on AI transformation for organizations across the globe, mostly working on helping our customers, build or work on their AI ambitions and moving them into what we call scalable business outcomes. And we work through this with our core three pillars of PPT, not PowerPoint presentation. PPT as in people, process, and technology. When I say people, it's mostly focusing on how do we augment and improve human potential. How do we streamline and make processes better, and using that technology to build better and intelligent systems. That's what we do at Nagarro. We call this fluidic intelligence, and building that intelligence is what we are going to focus on our talk today. All right, coming to the core topic now. Over the last several months of us talking with utility leaders and some of the digital leaders across many energy companies, what we saw is one theme is fairly sure. The conversation of AI is definitely shifting, right? And a year or two ago, most of the discussions, last year even here, for a technology company like us, most of the discussion was Gen AI. How do we build on use cases for AI? How do we do point solutions and stuff like that? Now the conversation has shifted entirely. It's more strategic, more grounded, more around scalability. Questions are, how do we move on from isolated use cases to taking AI, which can scale in an organization more securely, more safely? And that's what we're going to focus on today. Of course, covering the topic of Agentic AI, which Rahul will take on, who is our CTO. While I have some numbers on this slide, as we know, the utilities operating environment is changing fairly fast. If I go through the numbers, I'll be preaching to the choir. You all are very much aware, and we heard this throughout yesterday's sessions. We are seeing the affordability price pressures rising. We are seeing the peak demand expectations move upwards. And at the same time, still a large amount of capacity sitting in the queue. So the issue for a lot of utilities are not, can we generate enough power? The question also is, can we connect it, move it, balance it, operate it with enough speed and reliability, right? And that is the industry. Oops, moving back. And that is the industry reality. Utilities are no longer operating in a stable planning environment, as we call it, right? The demand is growing, becoming less and less predictable. The resilience pressure is increasing. Clean energy mandates are not going away entirely. And then there is the enterprise complexity. What I mean by that is utilities have more data than ever, and the operational decisions that utilities take with that data is siloed across systems, across legacy workflows, across institutional knowledge that's fading away. So that creates a unique challenge, as we call it, an orchestration challenge overall for utilities. But at the same time, AI momentum is definitely rising. This sector has, you all know this sector has moved beyond asking the question, does AI matter, right? most energy companies and utility companies have already started on their AI journey. That said, the enterprise-wide value is still untapped. We strongly feel that. So how do you design for fluidic intelligence, as we call it, right? In simple terms, the opportunity is not just to insert or embed AI in your existing workflows, for your use cases. The first shift is how do we build on an enterprise-level context. The second shift is building objective-driven systems, which doesn't just solve for one task. It solves for a whole workflow. And the third shift is building for more workflow automation. Of course, my second and third point are very much related. And how do we make that real is what Rahul is going to talk about. I'll give it to Rahul to come over here. He heads our AI, lives and breathes this topic. And we're going to showcase how do we build this overall framework and what does the blueprint mean for a utility. Rahul.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So just to take it from here, what Jyodeep said, and then after I have to summarize in very simple words, the ecosystem that we operate is not stable. It's not static. We live in situations where we are dealing with supply disruptions, energy demands getting peaked up, all the way to weather anomalies and stuff like that. And if we expect the standard systems are designed around it, that's not going to happen. So what today we are going to talk about is how the whole agentic and AI is something which is going to be something what's going to be need of the hour. But before I do that, I think it's important to a little bit talk about what utility industry need is not a standard frontier model. What rather they need is a model which is specifically designed around utility nuances, a model which understands utility signals. So you can see on the left of the diagram, utility business operates in its own ways. We are talking about a model or a brain which can sense signals which are very much coming from utility infrastructure, signals from the grid, disruptions in energy supplies, disruptions in transmissions, and not just that, not just sense. What I also said was, given the capabilities in the infrastructure, AI infrastructure, we can also predict how the weather is going to be, what kind of fires are going to happen, chances of fire happening is high, and accordingly plan according to it, right? So that's the whole point. A standard frontier model by any of the frontier model providers is not just going to do this. So if any one of us thinks, let's put tomorrow a standard frontier model inside utility and things are going to change, no, that's not going to happen. And hence, the whole point of what I'm saying is the model needs to be grounded to energy industry needs. Now, in the center, you see brain actually, the utility brain, which we are calling, is actually functioning. And the goal of this brain is to reason. Why? Because what we want is system to kind of adapt to these kinds of situations. What if there's a weather disruption? What if there is a fire? What if the energy demand spikes? The flows may not exist. The standard static flows and operating procedures may not exist. And that's essentially where the reasoning capability, if it works right, can help us handle these dynamic scenarios, generate playbooks, what we call as playbooks around these scenarios. And once you do that, you need a very different architecture. And if I go to the next slide, this is what is like the core of the whole architecture, the reasoning fabric, a fabric which sits in the center, but also kind of ingest your business nuances, your semantics, your actions, your business rule, transmission rules, trading rules, customer-related demographic segmentations, and so on. And once you ingest all of this into this fabric and let AI now run on this fabric instead of just running on plain English, things change a lot. We have deployed and kind of we are in the early stages of testing this, and initial results are pretty interesting. And I'll show you an example of how this thing works in reality. And I'll just take an example of a scenario where a utility company is trying to deploy this brain, utility brain, to react to anomalies, weather anomalies, for example. So as I said, the idea is not to just automate the existing linear flows. That's something what even any automation can do. Idea is if this reasoning works right, AI should be able to pivot. AI should be able to think alternatives. AI should be able to bundle existing services and packages, call the ecosystem partners if the need happens to be. And none of this can be code, none of this may exist in the existing systems. And that's the whole idea. For example, what's happening on the screen is, if you read it from left to right, a weather anomaly is predicted. And based on that weather anomaly prediction, which is done by one of the agents, which takes in weather signals, it runs a clustering model, which could be running on any of the GIS systems like ArcGIS, Mapbox, Esri, or whatever you use, do a necessary segmentation, figure out the hotspots where anomaly can happen, and based on that, do few things. One, it could inform that the chances of fire is high, and this happens to be near a utility station or a emergency station, and hence it's a high priority, or it's a low priority. Make sure the field services are planned accordingly, are stationed accordingly, are prepared accordingly. They have the necessary spares and inventories. And the normal flows break. For example, if the inventory doesn't exist, the normal flow would reach to a dead end. But now comes the reasoning. AI should be able to look at dispatches, spare parts at alternative spaces, move them together, do some bit of rebalancing of spares, to make sure they are available at the right place, prepare field people upfront to take care of these kinds of situations. If the champions are not available, make sure the backups are trained upfront, communications happen upfront, and this is a very different scenario which today doesn't exist. Today we are literally running linear flows where things just reach to a dead end and there's no action after that. And that's the whole point. If AI is able to reason, it better be non-linear. It cannot just be designed to automate your existing flows. And achieving this level of non-linearity is not trivial. And hence you need, on what I showed on the previous slide, the whole reasoning fabric, the fabric which ingests into your, which ingest all the semantics, business rules, objectives, behaviors. And not just that, recently we have also started talking about capability to have this fabric host your human capital, your knowledge capital, your digital capital. Because when these loops run, they take a lot of, they take a lot of feedback. Now, where is this feedback going to sit? Not in SAP, not in ServiceNow, not in any of the existing transaction systems. And in our architectures, we don't even have places where something of this kind of a feedback sit. Our architectures are not designed for knowledge. Our architectures are just designed for transactions. And hence, AI can only do so much if we don't do the necessary architectural plumbing. And that's the reason knowledge architectures are very different. So just to kind of summarize, if we aim for something in coming time, here are a few ground rules that I would suggest, and this is based on some of the best practices we have seen. What I was just saying was design for compounding. We don't want to design for transactions and those transactions gets archived and business continuity and all that standard stuff. We need to design for compounding, compounding of human capital, compounding of our learnings, compounding of our feedbacks, compounding of what worked, what didn't work, compounding of whatever we have done in iterations, they should add up. And hence the need of modularity, hence the need of designing it like an enterprise grade system, which cannot happen just by putting a frontier model. It's not going to happen. Also design it like a harness so that we can continue to leverage what's happening in the ecosystem, what's happening in the data ecosystem, what's happening in the hyperscaler ecosystems, what's happening in the frontier ecosystems. Don't get vendor locked in. The stage is moving so fast. Every month you end up with some benchmarks shifting here and there. So design it like a harness which can interoperate across providers. And that's a very, very important rule. Also, design it for objective, what Jyoti was saying. And one of the examples I showed. The system and the flows are no more getting designed around a specific journey. We just give an objective. Objective could be resilience. Objective could be faster turnaround in case of disruptions. And let agent reason. Let agent go and talk to sub-agents. Those sub-agents go and talk to the necessary backend systems, SCADA systems, service systems, energy systems, and so on. And that's the only way these things are going to work together. Also design it to make sure non-linear reasoning is happening. I showed you an example of what a non-linear reasoning is. And that's a huge shift which you will see happening in coming days. Non-linear reasoning in your infrastructure, I can bet it's not running right now in any of the companies. And will it be, will the status quo continue? No. 12 months, few months down the line, we'll all be kind of implementing non-linear reasonings in our systems. And then that's the future trend that I can see is already in motion. Design for governance, codify that governance. Governance is not some PowerPoint slides or tracking risk in some rack trackers or doing some heat maps on risk or putting some triage gates. It's something what we codify in our pipelines. It's the guardrails that we codify in our workflows. These guardrails could be business guardrails, could be compliance guardrails, could be security guardrails, and so on. Designed for evals. Evals are embedded into these agentic pipelines. This is what you will compound on. And if you don't start collecting them today in an operational fabric, in an ontology of sorts, it's not, miracle is not going to happen in just one iteration. Also design to make sure AI experiences are done in a certain way. These AI experiences are not like contemporary digital experiences. We are talking about headless scenarios. We are talking about conversational scenarios. We are talking about video-based scenarios, audio-based scenarios. And none of us have done this a year back. None of us have done this a year back. If you would have asked me how a multimodal journey look like in utility, I would not know maybe 15 months back. But today we have to design it as per native AI. And this cannot be contemporary AI experience. So that's very important. And this journey is not going to happen overnight. When we work in Nagarro, within Fluidic Intelligence, what we call as AI advisory is one of the initial steps that I would generally suggest to do is go back to the drawing boards. Think of the advisory as a step. Look at your architectures from a first design principles. Think about where knowledge is going to sit, where feedbacks are going to be collected, where evals are going to run, what guardrails are you going to deploy, how would you prioritize which specific agents and objectives. And that needs a little bit of a thinking, time, what we call as advisory, and also as one of the first initial steps. Don't just jump to a frontier model, which is okay, you can always do it, but that's not gonna lead you to compounding effects, non-linear thinking, and codifying your governance. And hence, what we generally suggest is start in a structured way. What we have seen is working very nicely is if you take some time out, bring in your leaders, technology leaders, your business leaders, your customer service leaders, and we kind of design a roadmap which addresses several layers of your blueprint, whether it's around strategy, whether it's around change management, whether it's around governance, whether it's around operating model. How dozens of these agents are going to work? They're not just going to work by themselves. You need a different level of decision ops. You need a different level of observability. You need a different level of operating model. How would you triage it? How would you stop it? How would you scale it? How would you take it forward? What kind of change management would you need? And these are new roles These roles didn't exist in organizations. And hence, it's important to, in this exercise, take a little bit of a break, think about it, spell it out, so that these then become independent tracks and can continue, but also involve business. It's not about jobs, it's about efficiency, it's about seamless operations, it's about intelligent operations. If one company doesn't do it, other would be doing it, because it's about the efficiency. It's about how you plan, how you operate. It's the fabric that you can't skip. It's happening, we like it or we not, and that's how it is. So with that, I'll invite Jyoti to maybe kind of summarize, and happy to take if there are any questions.
Thank you, Rahul. And there are questions, Rahul. So let us take the questions first, because the ending slide was pretty much the 3 takeaways that we talk about. First, as Rahul said, we need to think of AI as workflow transformation. The enterprise context matters. So ground your AI in the realities of your organization. So that brain is important. And all this does not scale. This started with a question that a CIO of a utility asked is, technology, I got it. I understand how it will be done. What I don't understand is, how do I start the adoption journey? What do I do? What does this roadmap for change management look like? From tomorrow, my people sitting in customer care or field force, their lives are going to change. How do I start that journey, give that training? So, you need some sort of a governance, you need some sort of an adoption strategy that at the end Rahul talked about. So those are our 3 takeaways. Of course, you would have, apart from these 3, you would have more questions, and we are here throughout the day. Rahul, you want to?
Sure. So the first question is, how do you build trust internally to allow these systems to take or more decisions making? Exactly, that's exactly the point. The whole fabric, and if it's missing, one, there is no way to look even at explainability. So several layers to bringing trust. One, it should be explainable, because when these systems start taking autonomous decisions, you should be able to backtrack, because things at times will not be on day one 100% right. So somebody should be able to go and backtrack and should be able to look at why did my agent took such a decision? What data went into it? Who approved it? What level of testing happened into it? How the lineage was? What was the model trained on? And so on. Why did model took certain decision? Is it biased to certain extreme data that it saw in training or something? So that explainability is very, very critical. And that explainability can only happen if you design architectures with a mindset that this is not just to do some POC by a few people here and there. It's something what my organization is going to harvest in coming time. It's we are not here to just build one small POC, but we are here to scale these to dozen and 2 dozen and 5 dozen odd agents in coming months. And I really want to make sure the infrastructure scales in operational ways, infrastructure scales from a trust perspective. So trust has several dimensions. Explainability is one of the dimensions. Second is the guardrails and the evals that we kind of ingest into it. So that's another very important thing I already talked about. Not embedding these guardrails at several steps in a federated way is a missed opportunity and will lead to problems. And it's important to start building your catalogs of guardrails, catalogs of evals. If I today ask how many of you today have a catalog of evals, I don't want anyone to raise hand, but answer will be pretty minimal. If I ask how many of these today's companies have a catalog of business utility guardrails, answer will be very limited, right? And it's fine. It's fine for today, but it's not going to be okay a few months down the line. So hence start building into this trust infrastructure. Last but not the least is this whole observability. Observability is our eyes into these agents and autonomous operations. And it's already happening. While we are talking today about utility companies, I'm working with other set of industries, whether these are shipping companies, CPG companies. the infrastructure for Agentic is scaling as fast as we can imagine. So that's a little bit of an answer, several layers to this trust. Biggest barrier? I think not barriers. Technology is for sure not a barrier in my mind, but it's about how seriously we look at it. It's our outlook. Do we look them as just as proof of concepts or MVPs or proof of values, or we really want to scale them to enterprise levels? If we really want to scale them to enterprise levels, then the quality of platforms you need, the quality of trust infrastructure you need, the quality of ontology, that context engineering that you will have to invest on is very different. So it's about our seriousness to this. We still think this is something which is going to happen on some ChatGPT portal and it's going to stay there. No, these things will penetrate our systems. Our systems will become autonomous. They are bound to become autonomous. And it's about our seriousness to design and invest into them. Mindset shift, I think, Jyoti, we want to take this from an operating model perspective, because you have been working with utility companies a lot.
Right. The mindset shift is mostly to look at, as we talked about, not to look at in silos, right? Design for, so Rahul had a great example up there, which was of outage management. Now, there is no harm in predicting for outage, doing it in a silo, but how do you solve for the rest of the workflow? Are you benefiting for that is probably the mindset shift. Today, we are thinking of only the generation aspect, not thinking of how do we communicate to the customer, or we are thinking of it, but it's happening in different areas. Can one single workflow solve for it, and multiple agents in a single workflow solve for it is probably the mindset shift. It's a longer conversation, but the newer, as Rahul said, I mean, in the last 1 year, this conversation was not there. The technology was not mature enough for us to have that conversation with you on the table, but now there is, and probably that's the shift that we're talking about mostly. And of course, the adoption, the change management, the adoption, I'm glad some of you are already thinking of it. There are frameworks available, and we are already experimenting and doing these workshops with utilities where, we are tweaking the framework of adoption with them. There are training models. How do you set up teams? How do you set up pods? How do you set up your AI factory, so to speak? How do you think of and prioritize use cases for value and stuff like that? Is in conversation we are doing pretty much every other day.
Just on this one, I'd like to add one more thing. Within Nagarro and the fluidic intelligence blueprint that we have created for advisory, change management is a huge part of what we see. Decision ops. I'll take this example, going back to the grid management thing. We're talking about looking at model drifts, taking decisions, putting guardrails where models should be working, should not be working. Now, who in the company is gonna do all of this? The role doesn't even exist. Let's assume the role exists. Now, what are the interfaces that these people are gonna look at? What kind of forms are they looking at? What kind of decision systems are they looking at? And these are things we generally skip. We talk too much about, on the left side, technology POC, the frontier model and stuff. We don't even talk about things on the right at most of the times. And the change management is not just train the trainer or observe the user. Today, it's going to be about even deploying agents to facilitate decision ops people. Your SLAs are going to change. How people are looking at these systems and responding, you will have to put SLAs in and embed SLAs in those workflows. And that's a big change in the way we have been looking at the systems. But thank you so much. We are going to be on the floor. We have some interesting demonstrations if any one of you are interested. Happy to be around and take any follow-up questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.